Okay, today is the 14th December. Actually, this is the last MicroProfile call for the 2021. So it's, we have quite a few items on the agenda. So the first one is the kind of the data access spec. So I think it's since we have like few people here, and then maybe we just quickly socialize among ourselves, calling for volunteers, and also discuss whether we want to get started on the data access. Because there's an initiative, similar thing on the Jakarta EE community. So what people think, because we have been discussing the data access for quite a few years. I think in the most like 3 years ago, perhaps. I think originally from Nathan Rowe and brought this up. So what other people think for this spec?
What I can say is that there was a discussion on the JPA issues tracker. And find the issue for, right? I'll try to find it later. About that similar or this kind of specification. And there is a proposal by Roberto, what's his name? Ottavio, right?
Ottavio.
Yes, and I put that proposal to the chat, link to this proposal, right? So this is going to be created in Jakarta. And actually, there was a discussion. I provided information that MicroProfile wants to do too, right? So, but folks decided that Jakarta is a better place for that. So Ottavio volunteered to create a proposal, lead the spec. It's going to be submitted very soon, I guess. Doesn't really make sense to create another specification in MicroProfile for that. Possibly the better idea is to just add committers to that effort. And you feel free to add yourself as committers directly to the doc.
Right, here is kind of the link is to Jakarta config. I guess this is.
Yeah, because I was making advices to folks how to make a proposal, right? And I put their Jakarta config as a sample of the document, similar to that, to use as a proposal. So Ottavio, for some reason, didn't delete that from there. It's fine.
Yeah, thank you, Dmitry. So what other thing? Is it like, I think should evaluate whether this is kind of the meet our needs, and are we trying to do something different? What other people think?
Yeah, this wasn't a program plan, right? For next year?
Is it, yeah, it's in our data access is in MicroProfile program plan.
Yeah, so it's a good initiative. I like it. So I will have a look at it later and see if I can participate in any way.
Yeah,
for sure that there shouldn't be like two efforts again. So we get into the discussion about where this should go, and we have some people wanted to do that on Jakarta, some people want to do that on MicroProfile. Maybe this proposal we'll probably try to validate that. I'm not completely sure if something like this is required or not. I will definitely will not like to see something like JNoSQL happening again, right? So if you have a specification that only has a single implementation, is that really a specification at all? And when I think about these Jakarta data or MicroProfile data, whatever you want to call it, repository pattern, I think that at least on what was discussed on that JPA issue was that it doesn't fit into the JPA spec because it's a JPA is a low level thing, and this is a very high level API. And definitely, if you look into the Delta Spike implementation, it's mostly like an implementation on top of JPA, right? So I'm trying to think what is the value of having multiple implementations on around this, and if these shouldn't like fall into a common category of projects where it's like a single implementation and then it can be reused across multiple vendors. Because quite frankly, I don't see any good reason for this to have multiple implementations. I don't see, and if you don't have like multiple implementations, then it's not really a spec, right?
No, I strongly disagree with what you're saying, Roberto. So most of Jakarta specs, there is only one implementation, right? And if this implementation created together with different vendors, right, then this is totally fine. And this implementation becomes vendor neutral, right? If every single vendor who's interested in that committing into this implementation and making different implementation for every single vendor, it makes sense only if vendors are following some goals to have a better integration with their versions of different implementations and so on, right? So I think having one implementation which made together, this is absolutely okay, right? And answering your second question about why it's not in JPA, right? It's mainly because no one will want to implement that in GPA implementation. So Hibernate strictly said that we're not going to do that, and in Eclipse Link we are also not going to do that.
No, that was not the question. I know I read that and I agree with that. And also, most Jakarta specifications have multiple implementations, and here I feel that we're going the way around, which is we don't really have an implementation, or maybe there is like Delta Spike and that's it. And then we're trying to make, so usually what happens if you look on how JPA got created, right? So it was mostly on Hibernate, but there are other things happening at the time in that space. So you have Eclipse Link, you have OpenJPA, you have the other one from Oracle, can't remember the name.
That's only one. There are only three: Eclipse Link, Hibernate, and OpenJPA.
There was another one, but never mind. But basically, what you had back then was you had like all these different ideas from multiple implementations, and then having to create something common between all of them, right? In this particular case, you don't see that work because there is only a single implementation that you can look at, which is Delta Spike, and that's it.
No. Again, this is not. Delta Spike is a repository pattern implementation for sure, but there is also Spring data. There is also Micronaut data, right? So all of these are slightly different implementations of the same thing. So, the purpose of the spec is not exactly make implementations which already exist together, right? But combine everything, take usable functionality from existing implementations which use the same kind of work in the same area and try to make a standard out of that, right?
By the way, there's no requirement to say, I mean, before you propose a spec, you must have an implementation. Also, there's no requirement to say you must have multiple implementation before you can release the spec. I think it's for even release the spec, okay, if there's a implementation, which is open source, yeah, that's satisfy the requirement.
Well, I mean, there might not be a requirement for that. That doesn't mean that it's correct, at least in my opinion. Having multiple mutations about something gives you different ideas, and at least proves the concept, and at least tells you that the whatever thing you're trying to abstract on a specification, it's already field proven. So if we go and do a specification of something that we haven't tried out yet on the wild, then I think it doesn't have much value as if you do it before. That's why we actually, on the MicroProfile side, we even decided recently, maybe like a few months ago, that every new specification has to go through the sandbox with some code samples and even some other implementations working over there. So you just don't do anything out of the blank, right?
Oh no, by the way, sandbox is optional.
Yes.
If you want, you can go through sandbox.
Yeah, but I mean, when
Profile,
that goes to a vote, right? So people will probably look if something was done into the sandbox. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, this is just my strictly personal opinion on how things should operate. They don't operate that way. That's fine.
Yeah, it's a one of the yeah, I think is no matter whether it's in Descartes or MicroProfile, we want to have like a one thing. The other thing is, I mean, directly speaking from end user point of view, it's this data access question come out is frequently. It's basically the people are saying, okay, is what's the data access model from the Descartes or from MicroProfile? I think that there's a need.
Yes, Emily, I strongly agree with what you just said. So according to my experience, pure JPA is kind of not enough. And people with the Spring background, they always look something like the repository pattern, right? So the idea of making a standard spec out of that, it makes sense.
Yeah. So this is recently I did the code range for the book I wrote. The people when they are to ask a data access question. so it's interesting. Yeah. So I pointed them to the mailing list conversation about the data access discussion. I think it's time to do something in the standard.
I would agree. Spring data is widely used when some sort of persistence in the service is involved, not only JPA and implementation specific stuff came, for example, from Hibernate. So thinking about that would be a good idea, I think. For the web services part, that is intended to cover, for example, gRPC, Dmitry?
I don't know. This is not me who created this proposal,
Okay.
right? So I guess I'm just guessing here. What Octavia meant is that this repository interface can use different sources underneath, right? So SQL, it means basically JPA. NoSQL is JNoSQL possibly, right? And what he meant on web services, now we would better ask him, right? Something else, let's put it this way.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so it's a kind of I think is if nobody volunteer, I mean, to do something kind of in MicroProfile, come up with something different or some or kind of has strong opinion, etc. I mean, push forward data access. I think is it's best to kind of join force. I think it's really good to join forces to work together under this proposal.
Yes, folks, think about that, right? So again, proposal link is there. So if you feel like joining, right, just add your names there. And I think Octavia Otavio will be happy to have more people in the spec.
Yeah, we have to watch and see the go through the review process, etc.
It's not been submitted yet. I was suggesting him actually to
Yeah.
bring it to the platform meeting today, which I missed most of the meeting. So I don't know, did he bring it today to the meeting or not?
I have
he
not
did.
seen.
No? Okay. So if he didn't, then we'll bring it to the next platform meeting to discuss that.
Yeah, that'll be in next year's
Okay.
conversation. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I mean, that's the first item. Once I start to share, it's difficult to. Okay, so the next one is the retrospective. So do we want to do the retrospective, I mean, now, or maybe it's do it later? Since we haven't got many people here.
No, that has to be done later because it's gonna take the full hour.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and we definitely should invite Payara to that meeting when it is on the next year's call, because it would be interesting why they choose to leave the working group.
Oh, you mean the retrospective, why they choose to live in a work group? Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so next.
Can we maybe make it an official steering committee meeting? Is that too much, or is it a good idea to get the whole group together? I think it's really important to do the retrospective right, because you can provide very much valuable information.
See that again,
Yeah.
Edwin?
If you can make it a steering committee call or something more official, that we can easily get the whole group together.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and having an agenda for it with retrospective topics would be good too.
Well, we have steering committee calls once a quarter by design. It can be more than that, right? I'm not sure it requires a steering committee call. I mean, as long as you put the topic out there and have people join, it could just be a regular call. I mean, I'm open to it being a steering committee call, but it doesn't, in my opinion, have to be really.
Yeah, I also hope it is necessary because it's kind of forcing it. But if we really need to get the group together to do something that is very important, maybe we can wrap it as a steering committee call to engage everybody to participate. But it shouldn't be necessary, I agree.
The thing is that on the steering committee call, will Payara continue to go to steering committee call, because they are not they are not members anymore.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's open to the community.
Yeah,
right?
I know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they could be explicitly invited to share their thoughts.
But Steve managed put an email explain why.
Yeah, that was a short version.
There'll be a more question and time discussion. Yeah. Okay, that's so it's yeah, so it's I think it's could be in the next hangout. Oh, Yeah, can discuss that. The other thing is this is with Piara leaving, will our the plan, the budget will be changed or not? Because when we define that, when we kind of determine our budget is based on the we have the kind of Piara with us with that extra few thousand. So John, do you know?
I'm sorry, you caught me typing a note. What was that?
Okay, so basically, I was saying is for our budget, the budget I think we projected with a sum. That sum including Piara's fee. Now Piara has left. I mean, is leaving in the 2022. So we are kind of few thousand short, aren't we?
Yeah, we'll have to adjust that. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how that's rectified. I know that Sharon replied to one of the comments, maybe from Amelia, about that. And this isn't really necessarily the call for that or to discuss this topic, but yeah, it is going to have to be resolved. So remember, this all rolls up into the greater Eclipse Foundation budget. So somehow that'll have to get addressed at that level too.
Okay, yeah, I thought I just mentioned it before I forget. Okay, the next one is MicroProfile 6.0. So it's which Java version to use and which Jakarta version to use. I think that the other thing is what's a timeline. So it's basically if we kind of trying to do 3 releases per year, and the next release will be like in February time. So in February time, which one, what kind of release do we planning? So are there any spec trying to put up a new release?
So there's not going to be a Jakarta 10 by February, right? So if you want to have a MicroProfile release by February or even March, or I will say even April, I don't think that Jakarta 10 is going to be ready. So what we've been hearing is that Jakarta 10 is going to mostly came out on the second quarter of 2022.
Yeah.
So you either target Jakarta 9 and then you have to keep it for the entire year where Jakarta 10 is out, or you have to wait until Jakarta 10 is out and then you delay the releases again. And,
Yeah,
and of course, if Jakarta 10 delays for some reason, then you have to delay here as well.
Yeah. So at the moment, we didn't say when we are going to do the MicroProfile 6. Are we going to do MicroProfile 6 next year in October or in June? So if it's yeah, I think either way, probably next year's release, as you say, Roberto, probably we're not going to target Jakarta E10. So because we need to wait for the implementation to be available, to be able to catch up, with the MicroProfile releases. So I think next year our Jakarta version is going to be 9.01. So the thing is, we plan like a February, June, October release. I think is we haven't decided like the February, what do we do with the release? Similarly.
So,
sorry for interruption.
Just
Emily.
Yeah. Okay, you go ahead, Dmitry.
Just simple question. So in the plan, we also have an alignment with core profile, right? So if we are not going to adopt Jakarta 10, then we should remove adopted core profile too, right?
I'm not sure I follow that.
Core profile is going to be released, at least as I know, as part of Jakarta 10.
Right.
So if MicroProfile is going to adopt Jakarta core profile it automatically means that MicroProfile is adopting Jakarta 10.
Right, but we don't have to necessarily remove it from the plan if we can achieve that still later in the calendar year.
Okay, but why we can't adopt Jakarta 10 in, let's say, September release?
Yeah, well, we could, right? And by the way, it's technically in October. These are fungible, by the way, but we've historically tried to be deliver in those months, right? In February, July, and October. So what we typically have done is, the the June release is the breaking change release, right? Historically, but until we can resolve some of these major alignments, then we're not going to be able probably to that timeline that way, pragmatically speaking, and that's okay. But the other thing that we've typically done is we've kind of gone off and asked the individual spec teams, hey, what's the plan for, do you want to deliver something in February, right? And we do it on a spec by spec release, or sorry, spec by spec basis. It doesn't even have to be the entire platform if we don't want it to be. So we could have a MicroProfile 5.1 that if there's updates to one of the core specs, or if there's standalone specs, those could.
Sorry, I can't hear you, John.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the problem with Bluetooth. It's connected to my phone too, and someone tried to call. So there, I just turned off Bluetooth on my phone. So we can, I think Emily's question is correct in that, are there any specifications interested in releasing in the February timeframe? Are there any updates to spec, I should say? It's an open-ended question.
I have seen some activity on the mailing list, so I think there is stuff coming. I think we just need to collect everybody's plans, the specifications, and plot it in a roadmap over the year and see which release we are trying to put out. I think it's 5.1, 5.2, and then 6.0 in the later year, maybe adopting core profile, but it's just my timeline in my head. But I think it's logical that it's going to be something like that.
Yes, so I think that's Emily taking notes there, and I think that's probably correct. What she's writing down, 5.1, 5.2, and then a 6, just based on pragmatically what we know right now. Maybe what we should do is post a question to the group, the Google group, just saying, hey, which specs are interested in an update in the February timeframe? If, again, historically speaking, if one of those is part of the platform, then we typically bump the platform as well, right? So it'd be a spec release for one of the components, so the platform.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so I will volunteer to post a message regarding our release, like 3 releases. Like we'll ask a question, which is back trying to do the February release, this core profile. The other thing I'm thinking, like maybe maybe it's kind of in the 1Q or early 2Q, maybe MicroProfile OpenTelemetry can be released. And then it's kind of, it could be released, and then like we could in 6.0, maybe we can remove the open tracing and then then add the MicroProfile OpenTelemetry into the platform. So that means it will be a kind of bigger release. So that would be a breaking change anyway. So maybe we could could do that.
And
But
all
Open
good
Telemetry, yeah, Open Telemetry could be released as a standalone spec
Yeah.
whenever it's ready, and then to your point, in 6.0, add it as
Yeah.
part of the platform, and perhaps drop
Yeah.
open tracing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah, we could release in a 1Q or early 2Q.
Emily, what about we just really start creating a visual roadmap next year with all of these ideas and plans and stuff that they can just visualize it and display it, you know, that I would really love that. I proposed it last year already, but it didn't come to it. But I think it will be really helpful that we, not only for ourselves, but also for the community, just display these are our plans.
Yeah, that's
I think that's, yeah, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot here, this call. That's actually a great idea, because we've been kind of have been asked to do that in the past, because organizations want something to point to pretty much at all times. And we kind of got away from that a little bit, I think. Right now, what we kind of have done is just point them to the program plan, right? And that's really the only document that we have that kind of talks about what we're doing. But I think from a spec specific perspective, that's a very good idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, so are you suggesting like for the spec to create a release plan, or you are suggesting in the platform, in the whole MicroProfile community, in the whole MicroProfile, basically your project, I mean, the kind of the spec will be released at what stage with the kind of example, the MicroProfile Open Telemetry or something like that?
Yeah.
You know what, one thing I'm thinking about is putting together a very simple spreadsheet, right? It just has the specs along the y-axis, and the x-axis across the top basically just has, you know, standalone 5.1, 5.2, 6.0, and let the specs basically put an X where they think they'll have a release with maybe a link to a release plan or something. It is time for us to do that kind of planning.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
All right, so I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just assign that to me, and yeah, I'll put that together. And I think what I'll do is, based on that, Emily, I'll also kind of post this out to the Google group as well. So I'll kind of take that action item off your hands. They're kind of tied. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Cool. You didn't assign it to me.
Yeah, here you go. You got this. So okay, so you own the whole release kind of things.
It looks like we need a correction to the minutes, and under the data access spec bullet, there's a sub point that actually doesn't belong under it. It belongs under MicroProfile 5.0 retrospective, which needs to be listed.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. And we have another issue for a major release. If we rename some of the specs that have naming inconsistency at the moment, then we should do that with a 6.0 release.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was. I put two links here, Jan. One is with your remarks on that. It's a 112. We still need to fix these. So I put them up for technical debt to make a PR in the near future to fix that. Because you were providing feedback on that things were not correct in that regard. But we put out a release anyway because we wanted to make it to December 7th. So I didn't think it would be fair to discard it. So I put it up there so that we can make a PR and fix the documentation.
Perfect. Thanks.
And the same goes for the other link that is from the MicroProfile 4.1 release. It also contains some updates you need to do to the platform spec. So I think I'm going to create issues for that and then put it on the roadmap somewhere that doesn't go forgotten.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Good. So I think is the other thing is kind of if we say, okay, October, we do a major release, that will be a 6.0. The other thing is, what about the Java version? So I think it's kind of 5.1, 5.2. We have to, we're not allowed to upgrade the Java version. The compile, what I'm talking about is the kind of compile version. So in the 6.0, do we plan to move up to Java 11?
I think we should mirror Jakarta, right? Which is 11 and optionally, well, we could discuss 17 as well.
Yeah,
Compilation
so
for 11.
For Jakarta 10, it's Java SE 11, and it should be able to run on 17 too, which is tested. And I strongly would vote to use the Java SE 17 language features as soon as possible. So if we go ahead with MicroProfile 6.0 to support only 17 as the Java SE version, that might be a good idea.
How aggressively are Jakarta specs retooling for Java 11 and greater language features, or are they basically just wanting as much as possible to maintain backwards compatibility and, you know, for maybe some new features or additional APIs to address the new language features?
I mean, for 10, it's 11, Java SE 11 language features. So,
right, but are the specs
for,
retooling for that, or are they just going to heavily rely on the existing APIs and add new APIs for the new language features?
No, I'm not sure if they're actually, some of them are probably adding, I don't know exactly what language features were between 8 and 11 that makes sense for an API. And I'm not sure if they actually do any update, but if they want to, they can.
We should.
But the important thing is that the TCK will be verified that it can run on 11 and above. So as Jan said, you can certify on 17. And I think that is actually opening for an interesting position for MicroProfile is to, I mean, you could incorporate Java 17 language features, use them wherever appropriate, but you just have to be careful when you integrate with the Jakarta APIs. You have to kind of map to the 11 version, and that should be fairly straightforward. And the runtimes will probably be, I guess all the runtimes that support both MicroProfile and Jakarta EE will certify on 17. So it's just a question of how backwards compatible does MicroProfile want to be.
Yeah, I think this is one of the AIs we're going to have to take out is how are the core profile APIs going to be updated for the language features, and we'll have to then see how that impacts the APIs that we have in MicroProfile.
Yeah, because one interesting discussion I've been trying to get running in the Jakarta EE community is what language features between 11 and 17 are you actually interested in? And so far, the only thing that has come up is records. And I don't think there are anything between 11 and 17 that makes sense in an API except records. And that is just a subset of the specifications. I'd more like to see it where.
Yeah, I'm also interested to know if people have, but probably it's going to be like a lengthy discussion. But I'm also interested in thinking what kind of language features will people want if we go to 17, and even records. I don't really see them as like a big feature as the API for an API design.
No, I agree. The only thing is that I've come over is that it would be nice if JSON binding would serialize them without having to kind of name the parameters get whatever. So you kind of go away from the Java Bean pattern.
Sure, but that's
the only place I see real benefit of records.
But that could be something specified on the spec, doesn't really change the API.
No, exactly. The API would be the same.
The only feature that I see, and not even a JDK 17 is most a JDK 9 thing, is the flow API for reactive messaging.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that for now at least I see that we should definitely benefit from. Now I don't really see like any language feature that we will. I mean, but I haven't do like a really big study on that. But maybe that's something that people can go and think about on what are the language features from 11 or 17 that you would like to see incorporated on the APIs.
I think the 11 bump is going to happen as soon as we at least go to adopt core profile, because if it runs on 11 and one of the MicroProfile specs is based on one of the specs there, and it's in the platform, then we automatically bump to 11. So that would be an automatically new base for MicroProfile.
Yeah, I agree. I think is before we find out our use case to move up to have to move up to 17. I think we should just stay with the 11. And in this case, like we can cover the vast customer base. And then once we move to 17, the customer on 11 can't use it. And the other thing is the kind of the like the other thing is kind of the between Java 11 and 17, because 17 was released like this year. I think is kind of maybe we still need to wait for the customer to catch up with it.
Did we have the mission statement for MicroProfile that is called "Go fast and break things"? So it should be allowed to act on the language features of 17. And which customer is running Java SE 11 on his platform and could not run SE 17? It's not a big jump like it was from 8 to 11. So might be.
No,
a good
idea. That's fine. I'm more than +1 on moving to 17. It's just that we shouldn't just move to 17 just because. I mean, we should find the features that we want to incorporate in the APIs and use them, because if you just say, oh, it's Java 17, but then you look into APIs that there's nothing 17 in there, so why did you move?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're doing in Jakarta as well. We don't see a reason to move past 11 on the language features, but we want to make sure the runtimes can run on 17 to take advantage of the security updates and the improved performance.
Well, as soon as you want to use records, for example, in any specification, you need to have a language level that supports it. So exactly. How can you define, how can you specify records without upgrading to 17?
No, so that is the one example I can find out, except the one Roberto said about the reactive support. When you want to reuse records, then you need to raise the language, but that is basically it.
But records on its own,
like half of the specs that you know.
Yeah, but records on its own. So if you look into our APIs, are we going to use records in? I don't see where we're going to use records. I mean, I see users like using records, so we can say yes, but I mean, on the interface itself, on the APIs itself, are you going to use a record in there?
Yeah, but you need to specify it in the specification how it should be
sure.
when you use a record, and you cannot do that without raising the level to 17.
Sure. So, but the source level will still be 11, but runtime level needs to be 17. That's what I'm saying.
Well, source level of the specification, you mean?
Sure.
Not of
exactly. yeah, the runtime will have to be 17 always, right? To be able to use the records. But what I'm trying to say is, if you want to use 17 language features, for instance, record is not going to change any of our APIs directly.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of like, so for instance, if you look into the Flow API, that's going to make a significant change on how you design the reactive API, right? So that's like a particular, that's like a change that you can see. A record is something that's not going to affect how, for instance, the config interface is going to look like.
It can actually affect the API because, for example, metric ID could be a record. So we could actually use the language feature to improve the API.
So what does this mean for implementations like, you know, Open Liberty, Wildfly? What we're basically saying is if MicroProfile sets the language level at 17, we're forcing more or less those Jakarta implementations, their minimum level pragmatically would be 17 as well.
When they
right?
try to use it together with MicroProfile, yes.
A lot of them do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So this is kind of the thing also I'm wary about is if we are kind of, Jakarta is our kind of upstream, we are downstream. I think it's for us, if I think it's much better to follow the same base. So
you're not the only thing you're forcing is that the runtime has to be executed on 17, which is already a requirement on Jakarta 10.
No, it says it says yeah, your TCK should be executable by both 11 and 17.
So both 11 and 17. So if you have
but not by the same runtime. So if you can choose to have Wildfly only on 17, for example, but we need to have one compatible implementation on 11, and whether Glassfish or somebody else supports that, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but what I'm saying is from a vendor product perspective, what they're going to end up doing is forcing their customers to 17. And we got to be real careful about doing that.
Yes.
If you want to use MicroProfile features, yes.
Well, yeah, and a lot of, you know, I won't say a lot of it, but I'm not sure how flexible all MicroProfile / Jakarta implementations that implement both are in turning off MicroProfile and keeping just Jakarta, right? And even if you can, it just adds a level of complexity and understanding to the product. So this is something just that we just have to be very careful about.
Yeah, before we have seen the data, I mean, what's the percentage of customer move to Java 17? I think it's much better for us to say, yeah, you can use this 11 and 17. So it kind of covers the majority of the market share for the Java users. I think without having a very strong business need or very strong use case, you have to move to Java 17. I think is we shouldn't just move to Java 17 for the sake of the kind of proof we can break fast.
Yeah, actually, Andy asked a very interesting question. Multi-line strings. Is that in 11 or is that in 13?
It's in a newer version. It's not in 11.
It's not 11? All right.
I think it's not. It's between 11 and 17. I think it was 14 or 15.
Okay.
Is Glassfish currently moved to 17? Java SE 17 as a runtime?
It passes
think
the test on
read.
17, yes.
Yeah.
But for instance, like picking what Andy is saying, that Java 13, like multi-line strings, will be useful for TCKs. So I don't see like how multi-line strings could be useful at the API level. But if we want, we can probably bump the TCK version that we run with and use, let's just say, JDK 17 or 13 or 15 or wherever to help us write the TCK if we really want to, and then keep the API into a lower level. That's possible.
The thing is, if you permit, basically the force the TCK to be on Java 17. However, the customer don't feel assured like all the TCK works on Java 11, and then their business are not protected. So basically, if they use Java 11, who knows? Don't know whether TCK will pass or not. I think if we want to support both, we have to do a multi-release. So it's have like 11 version and then 17 version.
Maybe maybe we should work that out. The release plan.
Yeah, I think we've got some runway before we have to make any kind of decisions around this, right? So
exactly.
let's see what the market adoption is, in the spring timeframe, early spring.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a good point. That's an October release, so we keep on discussing this, and also before the spec have any use case is nobody want to use Java 17, then we don't need to move to Java 17. For
a small footnote to that regarding spring, the next spring major release will definitely support Java SE 17 only.
I think John said that spring is John means the time is.
Yeah, but
Okay.
on a competitive framework, they already chosen to take Java SE 17.
But anyway, we allow Java 17 as well. So this is kind of also bring in another conversation. I think I also need to add the Java 17 on the MicroProfile starter, because now it's only 8 and 11. People asking about 17. But yeah, that's tied to implementation. I will follow up with the starter project. Okay, we only have 4 minutes left, so we quickly go through the kind of the technical debt.
We already discussed that.
Oh, this is a release. Okay, this one.
There's a technical debt from the 5.0 release.
Or about the.
Yeah, the naming stuff that Jan mentioned, we need to fix that. And from the 4.0 release, there's some we're generating the artifacts. We need to clean up some stuff. It's not breaking, but it's nice to do. It's tiny.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me find the.
And the next point is, or the next points are from Roberto because of the discussion in open telemetry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll skip that one. I think the other one is more interesting to discuss, the observability group, especially because I've seen that the metrics group has been pushing some stuff as well this week. And quite frankly, I believe that both tracing and metrics should merge into or have like a separate observability group, especially because both tracing and metrics, and if you think logging, which is not really covered on the MicroProfile side, but OpenTelemetry, for instance, does cover logging. All of these are fall into the observability side of things. And I believe that at least I'm not aware of what the metrics group is doing. And I'm not even sure if the metrics group knows what the OpenTelemetry side is doing. So I believe that there should be some sort of conciliation or reconciliation between both groups to make sure that what they come up with on the metric side and on the tracing side, it's consistent at the platform level, and it works in a similar way, right?
For yeah, I joined both groups. For the current MicroProfile metrics, so they focus on the micrometer. So basically, they work out different options, like I mean the way to adopt micrometer. That's pretty much is kind of focus on micrometer is like one option, adopt a micrometer. Second option is create the shim layer. I think is kind of the at the moment the kind of the in the group like at least I mean a few members lean towards the shim layer. Basically, the implementation can bring in the micrometer, and then on the surface is still the microprofile metrics, the APIs, and etc. And so they have not, they are not targeting open telemetry metrics. So this is kind of the metrics folks are doing. I think is kind of the good idea to have some like a tracing a metrics kind of interlock. I'm not sure whether it can happen like in the meeting or kind of the or in the even in the maybe technical course or something like that.
But I think we need to have some sort of alignment, right? So
yeah,
on the metric side for OpenTelemetry, so that's something that the OpenTelemetry spec is working on. Is not something finished yet. I'm not saying that micrometer or OpenTelemetry metrics is better than the other, but I believe that we should look into both. And even whatever shim layer around MicroProfile metrics, and try to make this consistent, right? One thing that might be so right now we are pushing on OpenTelemetry tracing size. One thing that might be hard for us to answer is if we are pushing OpenTelemetry tracing and then users look into OpenTelemetry, and most likely they'll say, oh, we want to use the metric side of thing, and then we have to point them into another direction. That might be a terrible user experience. I don't know. But we need to have a justification to see, oh, we picked this from one side, picked that on the other side. But right now, I just feel that both groups are like working in the separate paths, and I think that should be something on top. It could be like this technical call, right? But I'll probably call it more an observability group, because other stuff is going to fall into that lap, so it's going to be a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Also, the MicroProfile like a metrics group, they kind of the reason they created this shim layer is in the future down the line, like in 3 years time, maybe it's the kind of open telemetry metrics, maybe kind of overtake kind of the micrometer, and then they can directly get them.
Can I like have one question here? You are actually discussing stuff about one of the specifications that are not us, and another specification that are also not us are competing for something, and we are deciding how we handle that. Like, that's not how specifications should work, right? We should be either specifying stuff or not specifying stuff, but saying that we will follow somebody else and specify something on top of it, that just sounds like wrong. That's not how it should work. So either ignore it and say we don't care about metrics, do whatever you want, or let's say that, you know, we care about metrics and tracing and health checks and whatever, and let's specify it, and then let the implementations choose what they will base their implementation on. Like, this is just unbelievable what you just said.
Totally agree with you, Tomas. We actually discussed that recently, and my personal opinion that using a word shim in specification is a bad practice. So we are trying to have a blessed other API in our system without any control over it. This is bad.
Yeah, I think it's by the way, I think I forgot to do the time check. We are 4 minutes over. So it's to sum it up. I think if you have like a particular opinion regarding the MicroProfile metrics, and then join their call. Their call is on the MicroProfile calendar is on Tuesday. I think the next time they meet up probably second week in the January time, and also can like kind of ask them on the Gator. So yeah, I think we have reached the top of the hour. So as we mentioned earlier, this is the final call for this year, and then we reconvene like next year on the, I think it's on the 3rd January. If it's the 3rd, yeah. Anyway, Tuesday, first week in January. With that, thank you so much, kind of for this call, and have a great time. Have a great break.
Thank you, Emily. Bye.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Emily. Everybody have a great holiday.
Yeah, have a great time. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.